we are just a week away from the 43rd regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government known as CARICOM. What's on the agenda?
Yes, Pearson. Well, this is the major event, annual event in CARICOM. Typically, we have two heads of government conferences, but one is known as the intersessional, and so it's a little less substantive. But the big one is the one in July. It coincides with the anniversary of the formation of CARICOM. So this year it's going to be in Suriname on the 4th and 5th of July. And we have a packed 11 item agenda, and I'll just take you through that agenda very quickly. So we begin with an update on COVID-19 and other emerging health issues. We go on to security issues, update on the situation in Haiti. We'll have a report from the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CARICOM Single Market and Single Economy, and that effort is led by our Prime Minister. Then we go on to looking at the CARICOM Agri-Food System Agenda, and that's led by President Ali of Guyana. We go on to look at something very important, very new, the development of a CARICOM industrial policy. Then we have our engagement with community stakeholders, the private sector, labor, civil society, and our youth. That is followed by the engagement with our special guests. And every year, we invite a special guest to these conferences. So this year, we will have the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. That's a new organization that we put together about 2 years ago. We go on to look at climate finance, community governance, and finally, border issues, the Belize-Guatemala border dispute and the Guyana-Venezuela border dispute. So 11 substantive items over a 2-day period, Pearson. Lots of work to be done.
Indeed. You know, for someone listening, to the ordinary person listening, they're going to say to you, I hear nothing talk about price hike. Haven't heard anything talk about the cost of petrol. I've not heard anything talked about the cost of this. How do you respond to that within the context of the agenda items?
No. This is a very practical agenda. For example, the CARICOM Agri-Food System Agenda. And Barbadians would have heard a lot about it in terms of the Barbados, Guyana, Barbados, Suriname initiatives. But this is all, this idea that CARICOM needs, that we need to upgrade our food production. This has been driven by what has happened over the last couple of years with COVID-19, the disruption in international food chains, the increase in food prices. And so we are working feverishly to see how we can boost local production of food in our region, and thereby not only bring down those prices, but make sure that our people have food security, that if the worst comes to the worst and the food supplies stop coming in from the outside world, that we can at least feed our own people. And then there's, as I said, very historic, the development of a CARICOM industrial policy. Now, it was Prime Minister Motley who at the last heads of government meeting made the point that, hey, you know, we have prime ministerial subcommittees dealing with CSME, dealing with agriculture, dealing with tourism, but we do not have any special committee dealing with industrial production. How could this be possible? If we are serious about developing a regional economy, then we must be developing industry. And so her proposal was accepted that a prime ministerial subcommittee led by President Santoki, that's the president of Suriname, should be put in place. And that the first order of business is to identify 10 non-food items that are essential to the Caribbean and that we should be doing more to produce for ourselves in the Caribbean. So we will get the first hint of the work of this Prime Ministerial Subcommittee. President Santoki will make his report on what those 10 non-food items might be that we are going to really double down on trying to produce in the Caribbean. So a lot of this agenda is very, very development oriented. And climate finance, I can't help but mention climate finance. I mean, I've seen some horrific pictures yesterday on social media about the sargassum seaweed once again invading our east coast. That's going to cost Barbados money. It's going to cost us effort and money to, for example, try to clean that sargassum. That's an effect of the global warming that we are experiencing. And so we are embarking on a serious advocacy mission to say to the international community, hey, the Caribbean countries need access to finance. We need to be compensated for the loss and damage that the global warming is causing us through no fault of our own. You big industrialized countries that have caused this problem, when we have to spend money that we never anticipated having to spend to do things like clear the sargassum seaweed, you need to compensate us for this. So we are very clear that much is owed to us so that we can adapt to climate change and that we can be compensated for the losses that we are experiencing, and we are going after it. So that's why this particular item is on the agenda. It's all about going after access to finance that is really due to us in the Caribbean.
I want to look at the engagement of our special guest, the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, and put into context why that is a part of the agenda.
Well, this is a relatively new organization, but this really goes back to the mid-1970s when the Caribbean countries, when the former colonies of Europe in the Caribbean, in Africa, and in the Pacific area came together to negotiate with the then European Economic Community trade and economic relations. And so we became known as the ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of Countries. And you may remember back then we negotiated the Lome Convention, and that convention was subsequently superseded by other conventions. So we had this ACP, African, Caribbean, Pacific Group of Countries, but we only came together to negotiate trade arrangements with Europe. And at some point we said, look, this is not good enough. Why are we only coming together to negotiate trade with Europe? We should be an organization in our own right, with our own agenda that is independent of relations with Europe, that should really be looking at relations between ourselves. And so about 2 years ago, the ACP group of nations, we formed our own organization called the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. We have a secretariat set up in Brussels. And so it is a new organization. It's still very much a work in progress. And we are now, really trying to develop it and to give it its identity, its agenda, and its program. And so it's very important that the Secretary General of this new organization, he come to a CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. He sits with us, and we get a better understanding of where we are going with this new organization. So it's very important, Pearson, that we develop these South-South relations, the Caribbean, Africa, and the territories of the Pacific area.
I don't want to lose sight because one of the agenda items too is the update on Haiti. And we haven't spoken significantly in a while about that. What can we expect, do you think, at this upcoming heads of government meeting?
Yes, this is very close to my heart, Pearson. I firmly believe that if only we can solve the problem of Haiti, that Haiti, far from being a detriment to our community, Haiti could actually become, a savior. Haiti could become a real driver of development within the Caribbean, but we have to get Haiti stable. So at the last heads of government meeting in March in Belize, we decided that we were going to put together a CARICOM team that is actually going to go to Haiti, that is going to, dialogue with all of the relevant parties within Haiti, that's going to try to bring everybody to a negotiating table so that we can work out a Haitian solution to the crisis in Haiti. But since then, I would say we have somewhat hesitated because of the deteriorating security situation in Haiti, all the kidnappings, all of the instability. But I think we are coming together at this conference now to discuss this matter again. But I think we have to bite the bullet. In spite of that security situation, in my opinion, a CARICOM team can go into Haiti and can be safe in Haiti. Obviously, if we go into Haiti, that team can't be going all around the country, but there are hotels, safe spaces in Haiti. And once we go there, we can actually bring the people that we need to talk to. Rather than us going out to them and being exposed, we bring them into that safe space. But more and more, in the international community, people are saying, look, the key to solving the situation in Haiti lies with CARICOM. And that's a new departure. That hasn't happened before. In fact, usually we have been shunted aside, even though Haiti is one of our member states. No one seemed to want to recognize that we had a special role to play. But now that all of the other parties have failed,
Yes.
they've all failed, and they recognize that they really have no solution. They are now all looking to CARICOM to step forward and to play the critical role. So I'm hoping that we are really going to make that determination to send in that team and get this process going in a very serious way.
Well, there's at least one new face coming into the CARICOM caucus in Grenada's new Prime Minister, David Mitchell. He'll be there, no doubt, to represent his island, his group of islands. And then there's the ongoing situation in St. Kitts and Nevis, where the government is being challenged, by the other parties in that unity government there. Is that also something that CARICOM engages in, or do you just leave it to the independent states to do their thing?
Well, it's not on the agenda. It probably will be discussed by the heads of government in caucus, though. These conferences, you have your public sessions where all the delegates will discuss together. Those delegates will be heads of government, attorneys general typically who attend, ministers of foreign affairs, permanent secretaries, CARICOM ambassadors, senior foreign service officers, and so forth. So we all meet in plenary, and there are a number of items that we discuss together. But there are sensitive items that only the heads of government plus one other official. So typically, it will be the head of government plus the attorney general, or the head of government plus the minister of foreign affairs. They will meet in caucus privately, and they will discuss sensitive matters that they don't really want to get out there. So it is very possible that they will discuss the St. Kitts situation in caucus. But it's a bit peculiar that Parliament has been dissolved. The election hasn't been called. I guess it's somewhat similar to what happened in Barbados in 2018 when there was
Yes.
a delay for some 7 weeks. But that never augurs well for the governing administration, because that tends to send a signal to the electorate that you are afraid of facing the electorate. But suffice to say that no parties in St. Kitts have petitioned CARICOM in any way on this matter. So I guess the people of St. Kitts feel that they will handle it themselves. But I could see the heads of government, maybe in caucus, having having a glance at it.
Yes.
But
Ambassador,
in terms of the new Prime Minister of
Grenada.
Grenada, um, at the CARICOM, at these heads of government conferences, they always carve out space for the new kids on the block, the new boys, to speak for the first time. So he will get an opportunity to address the opening ceremony of this conference, so that his peers can get to know him, and all of us can hear what his message is.
Indeed. Quite a packed agenda. We want to hear more. Next week, should it be God's will, we will connect with you once again to continue our conversations on CARICOM. Ambassador Comissiong, thank you.